Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to North Shore Live, Cooper's Corner. We're live this evening. This is, we're September the 10th, 2014. The kids are already back at school, and I hope all is well at your house, because I know some of the kids from the junior high school have come down with some nasty colds and sore throats and whatever, but hopefully that will be all cleared up. And then little kids get it. I speak from experience because my grandchildren have come down with this, I think, not a mysterious illness. One has the pneumonia, walking pneumonia, and the other one just has sniffles. But if you have allergies, this is a very bad time for you. The goldenrod is out. Also, I speak from experience because family members have very hard allergies with that goldenrod. Not daisies, the goldenrod. They might look pretty, but they are really dangerous for allergies. This evening, I want to thank my guest for appearing on our program, Michael Volpe, who is an investigative reporter, and we're going to be talking about guardianship and the abuses of guardianship. And some other issues, and he is a writer. He's written a couple of books that he's brought here to the studio, and because we're live, we're very excited for him to speak and tell us about his information. But first, I would like to thank you all who are watching for going to my YouTube, and I think it should be down here somewhere, my YouTube. Larry's going to punch it up in a minute. And www.youtube.com, whatever. Larry will get it. So there it is, because we've had such wonderful response, specifically to Mr. Amu, who is on, and as you recall, Mr. Amu was the gentleman who came on. He is an attorney holding 4 college degrees, master degrees, and he chose to pursue Juris Doctorate, which is becoming an attorney, and he came on the program to tell about judicial corruption in Illinois. Your response has been overwhelming and wonderfully accepted. I thank you. He thanks you. He's a wonderful, wonderful young man. At this point, we are just shy of 3,000 views. That's not counting watching here in the studio. That is going to the YouTube and viewing Mr. Amu. Just short of 3,000 views. That's outstanding. I appreciate and thank you from the bottom of my heart. And as well as with the criminalization of Asperger's syndrome and mental health, Mr. Joseph Jason, is just short of 1,000 views. You know, this is the gentleman who has a son who is 22 years old, and the young man has Asperger's syndrome. He's a graduate of University of Iowa with A- grade, and was charged with some degree of, I guess you would call it, he was calling the girl on the phone or whatever. The state of Iowa could not pursue did not have the jurisdiction to pursue Mr. Jason's son because he was in Florida. So the state recruited the girl, she's above 21, to entice him to come back to Iowa, of which they would at that point arrest him. And they did. The young man was, I guess he was fooled into coming back, and then he received 55 years in jail sentence for harassment on this girl. And this is only her word, because Mr. Jason read on the program papers of what the son was supposed to have said or what he did say from his iPhone, and nothing in there was scandalous or thwarted in any way. So Mr. Jason, who also is the president of the North Suburban Barrington NAMI, that's the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, is just without words in thanking you, because he went into the court with the judge not even knowing what this disease is. I can tell you also from experience, I have a grandson who is 10 years old who has Asperger's syndrome, and this is a very serious situation. So we look out for his safety and to educate the judges in every state dealing with anyone having a disability of this situation. Everyone else on here, I'm just overwhelmed, and thank you again so very much. Please go to my YouTube and watch our programs. And Mr. Volpe will be on our YouTube shortly after we go live on this program. But we are so happy and so pleased and so thankful that you think so much of us here at North Shore Live Cooper's Corner to bring you programs that you yourself have requested because it is of such controversial content. So much for that. I have paperwork here to show everything. Also, Mr. Dukowski, Kenneth Dukowski, who is an attorney that the ARDC here in Illinois has denied him to practice law for 4 years because he was outspoken enough to proclaim his rights for First Amendment rights. I was to the court hearing for the ARDC for Mr. Dukowski, and everything he said is truthful and honest, as is Joanne Dennison, another attorney, a patent attorney, and they are trying to assault Joanne because she puts on her website the findings that go on in the court, which is freedom of information for First Amendment rights, and they want to take away her rights for blogging. Blogging. Where is the law in the Constitution that says you cannot blog in a public building, office, or courtroom? No such animal exists. That's what we're going through right now. There's so many things. I'm so thankful that you are helpful and responding to, and we thank you so very much. This is the letter. It's very short. It's in large print, so I can read it. And this is what Mr. Dukowski, who sent it to the world on his blog or whatever, he sent it to everyone. And you might have received it, but I felt that since it is already public knowledge, that it would be appropriate to speak of it. By the way, Mr. Dukowski also sent information and requested assistance from Senator Dick Durbin, of which Mr. Dukowski received back some type of a political statement regarding Social Security. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the defamation and assault on the senior citizens, called elder cleansing, how they kill them, how they murder them. I can speak from that, as that is what happened to my mother in Cook County. I'm very free at will to speak of that. My program, my program. Anyway, this is from Mr. Dukowski. Let me read you this. This one goes to Senator Kirk because he never received a letter from Mr. Dukowski per se that would make this statement. Senator Kirk, as I watched you on television the other night, I wondered if you realized that both you and I looked at by the elder cleansers as prey. Yes, you make a wonderful recovery from your stroke. However, that medical accident placed you in a different category. You are a disabled person. You are not going to be recruited to play safety for Northwestern. I've previously written to you about the Mary Sykes case, and your office responded appropriately and politely. I appreciated the fact that I did not receive a copy of some speech you gave. I am now forwarding to you, and have done for some time, the pleas of Barbara Stone, Candace Schwager, myself, and others to read the material sent to you and to represent the interests of the elderly and the disabled who are being regularly, openly, and notoriously being deprived of the benefits of the Bill of Rights of the American Constitution. My plea does not have to be formally documented, as the court record in the Cook County Circuit Court reveals exactly the outrage that is being perpetrated. Take a look at the Mary Sykes case, 09P4585, or the Alice Gore case, that's my mother, etc. If that does not turn your stomach, have a talk with Mary Richards, John Wyman, Rudy Bush, etc. There are thousands of seniors who are being victimized daily by the felonious elder cleansers. The lure of the money is overwhelming. The taxes not collected could balance the Illinois budget. This cancer is destroying the core values of America and has aided and abetted the state agencies who corrupt administrators, such as Jerome Larkin, spend state of Illinois monies to assault the First Amendment rights of all who complain. Democracy is not a spectator sport. I do not want this to sound like a threat, but it is not every day that you and I get older, a little more vulnerable. Either of us or our spouses could become victims of the elder cleansers, and with the current apathy and inaction, we could become nursing or hospice roommates while we and our families are elder cleansed. Each of us has a parochial self-interest in protecting America's core values. It is signed Ken Ditkowski, www.ditkowsky, Law Office, LAWOFFICE.com. I'm sure you received this, as half the world received this letter, and I just felt it my duty that I read this on the air. And if you wish to come on, we're old friends, almost 20 years worth. So this is where you started out as chief of the, let's see, John Porter's chief of staff from John Porter. You came here, and while running for congressman, you came here, and then for running senator. If you would like, I would be very pleased and honored for you to attend. So thank you very much, and I await hearing from you. You know my number, and if at all, we would appreciate whatever timeline you have. We will make ourselves available. Now, on to this evening's program. Michael Volpe, investigative reporter, has incredible information to share, and wrote about a Korean and Vietnam veteran inside the VA system, held against his will. This is horrific, absolutely horrific. You can read his information on, what is it?
That one's on the Daily Caller.
On the Daily Caller, this one. So, you know, I'm doing all this talking, and he's my guest. I'm so sorry. Thank you for coming. This is Michael Volpe, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Let me preface everything by saying there are two terrific books out of the Definitive Dossier of PTSD in Whistleblowers by Michael Volpe. Here is that book. Can you get that? Camera one? Are we ready for that? I'm holding it. There we go. There, right is left and left is right. There we go. That's one. Now hang in there for 1 minute. And here is the Prosecutors Gone Wild, also my Michael Volpe. There we go. Very good. These can be had at
Amazon
and
any other retail.
And wherever.
Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble. Okay. Well, this is exciting that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
You see what we do. This is all interest that the public brings to my attention. Mm-hmm. They ask me to put these programs on. They're interested. They feel that they're fearful of retaliation.
Right.
If they make comment to nursing homes or anyone. What say you on this?
Well, in fact, I've written 2 on guardianship abuse. One is in the Chicago area that we'll talk about in a minute, I presume. But Norman Hughes is the Korean and Vietnam War veteran. He's 81 years old. And in fact, that article came out, I think August 1st, but right in the beginning of August. Mm-hmm. And since then, there's been some updates that's not in the article. Oh. There's a lawyer that's involved in that case named Keith Dobbs, and he has took away his phone. He also has restricted certain people aren't allowed to see him, and also he's not allowing Norman, even with his son, to leave to go have lunch or dinner outside of the nursing home he's being held at, which I believe is a form of retaliation. I wrote about whistleblowers, and they're retaliated against, and this is a form of whistleblowing, and yeah, they're retaliated against as well. And towards the end of the month, Norman and his son did a YouTube video, and this retaliation really started right after that YouTube video came on. And yeah, absolutely. What happens in all of these cases is there's often it's a lawyer. There's some lawyer or lawyer type who essentially becomes your master. And in this case, the guy's name is Keith Dobbs. And, I exposed a lot about this guy. Norman Hughes had a little more than $150,000 about a year and a half ago. And he had built that up over the course of his life.
He's 81 years old.
Now. Yeah. But when all of this started, he was 79. He was in his late 70s. Okay. And again, he served in Korea and Vietnam. He's more than earned the right to serve.
Absolutely.
To be called a hero. So he has $150,000. All of this got started because a cousin of his wanted at the money. She wanted a piece of his money, and he didn't want to give it to her. And so what she did was she tricked him. She told him to go see a doctor. He thought it was basic tests. And the way she did it, I think, this doctor, the doctor's name slips my mind, but I remember he or she was a doctor of internal medicine. And so I think he thought he was in there for something related to internal medicine. And the doctor he thought he was going to take tests. The doctor was actually giving him a competency test. And then they brought that into probate court. And the first thing is, a doctor of internal medicine, what they claimed was that his memory was so shot that he was no longer competent to take care of himself. But the problem with that is, a doctor of internal medicine can't know that, not as an expert. He's internal medicine. If you have cancer and the cancer is so strong that you're no longer competent, that's one thing. But this doctor is basically saying your memory is so shot that you no longer know what pills to take, whatever he came up with. Bottom line is, the doctor was giving an unexpert opinion. It's the way I describe it is, you remember Louis Pasteur?
I don't know him personally, but I do remember.
The man was a genius, correct? But would you want him to deliver your baby?
I don't think so.
Right, because he was a genius in his field.
In his field.
And I bet you Pasteur would be smart enough to say, that's not my field.
Yeah.
So same thing, if you're in internal medicine, that's your specialty. So they got this doctor to say he's incompetent.
Is that the Dr. Felice Wyatt? Is that the one?
Yes, correct. Dr. Felice Wyatt. And it's interesting, this all was centered in the Memphis VA, and the reason is, as a veteran, he went to the Memphis VA because you get full benefits. He served in 2 wars. So Wyatt claims his memory is so bad he's no longer competent. At that point, basically the entire probate bureaucracy comes in. They appoint this guy Dobbs to be the VA conservator. His cousin plays a role. They bring in what's called a guardian ad litem, and I'm writing a book about family court.
We know about that.
And guardian ad litem, they're just as corrupt in family court as they are in this. So they bring in this guy James Bingham, and he's supposedly supposed to act in Norman Hughes' best interest. So he writes up a report, And this report's very interesting. He interviews a woman named Dr. Whitney Schroyer, who he says is a nice person, who also says that Norman is not of high mind and should be incapacitated. Well, I looked into Dr. Schroyer. She's a resident. Now, I look, she's a resident at the University of Tennessee doing her residency at the Memphis VA. So I looked up, at the University of Tennessee, what are you allowed to do as a resident? You're basically allowed to do almost nothing without an actual doctor right behind you. And here she is saying, I don't think he's competent. So basically her expert opinion is used to move him, to make him incompetent. And so what was happening at the time, Norman Hughes was living with a woman named Debbie McCoy, and she was his caretaker. She had a VA certified facility. She had a 5-bedroom house. She charged him $2,700 a month. He had a beautiful room, and he loved it there. His family came to visit, and he liked it there. All right, so he understood that at this point in my life, I shouldn't live by myself, which is why he was living with Debbie McCoy.
Okay.
So they moved him from Debbie McCoy to this place called Kirby Pines. Now, he paid her $2,700 a month. He has a room in Kirby Pines for $7,000 a month. So he's paying almost 3 times as much for a room that he doesn't like. And oh, by the way, court records say as of May, his $150,000 is down to $80,000. And this guy Bingham, the guardian ad litem, and this guy Bingham, in his report said, even I don't know if he said even I, but he said, I don't think he's mentally capable. He can't remember his medicine. Bingham is a divorce attorney. Again, maybe the best divorce attorney, and I don't know that he is, but he has absolutely no expertise to decide whether or not this guy is mentally incompetent. And on top of it, the family had his family doctor, and the family doctor said, yeah, he has some memory problems. Everyone who's 79 has some memory problems. They're no more serious than the average 79-year-old. He's fine. They dismissed that opinion. They used the opinion of a guy in internal medicine and a resident, and now he's stuck in Kirby Pines. And a couple of other things. First of all, this guy Dobbs,
Wait, let me just ask you a question. This Dr. Schroyer, you tried to connect with him for
her. It's a female.
Her to connect with her for a comment. She refused, or she?
She didn't refuse. It was interesting. I called the University of Tennessee, and they said, well, she's at Memphis because she's studying at the University of Tennessee, doing a residency at Memphis, Memphis VA, which means really the whole time she's at the Memphis VA. I called the Memphis VA. And, I was like, look, you guys don't want to give me a comment. That's no problem. I got my story. And they didn't make her available. There's only one of two things that happened here. Either she knew what she was doing, and she knew as a resident she was giving an expert opinion that no one would understand that was a resident, or, and this is possible, she was having an extemporaneous conversation with this guy Bingham, and he played her. He said something like, well, why don't you give me your opinion? And as a resident, nobody ever wants to hear your opinion. You remember Catch Me If You Can, the way he fooled all the doctors was he asked all the residents their opinion. They were so overjoyed. And it may have been that, she was so flattered that someone, and that may be. Now, if that's the case, she has a duty to come forward and say, I remember this is how it happened. I didn't realize that what I was saying to him was going to be used, but she hasn't said that. She hasn't been made available. Frankly, in my opinion, and this is not an expert opinion, if she knew that was going to be used in a report, her license needs to be removed. She's done as a doctor. I think everyone involved in this case, this guy Dobbs should have his license removed. Bingham should have his license removed. And the other thing I found is there's 2 probate judges in that county, and this guy Dobbs has 20 cases all with the same judge. Now, I did the math. It's 20 to the 20th power. It's 1 in 5 million chance that that's an accident. 1 in 5 million chance. So this guy Dobbs basically has pilfered his money, and now he's retaliating against him. His license should be removed. Bingham was offering unexpert opinion as an expert. His license should be removed. If Schroyer, if she wasn't played, if she knew what she was doing, her license should be removed, and so should Wyatt. They should all be done in their professions. And yeah, he's down to at most $80,000, and he has 2 pensions between the military and his work, and it doesn't cover $7,000 a month. I mean, it's mind-boggling that they would do this to him. And so his money continues to go lower and lower and lower every month.
Of course they will.
Because He doesn't have $7,000 a month, nor would he need it if he lived with Debbie McCoy.
Well,
which is what he wants.
You know, let's give the people the information. Now, this is from the Daily Caller,
right?
And they can take a look at that. It's dailycaller.com.
If you search it and you put in Korean Vietnam War veteran held against his will, there's a bunch of stories that come up. Mine is from the Daily Caller. Every other story is obviously taking from mine or referencing mine. But yeah, no, this, you know.
What does the University of Tennessee Health Center say?
That's very interesting. So they have like head of residency, nobody wanted to give me a comment before the article came out. After the article came out, I contacted a bunch of people. One of them sent me to the general counsel's office. Now that I find interesting. Why would I need to talk to the head lawyer unless, of course, they know a crime has been committed?
Sure.
And the general counsel's office. Nobody from the Memphis VA, and the Memphis VA is not innocent. They have the power. Not only the Memphis VA, Robert McDonald. I had a whistleblower that recently came forward. His name is Sean Higgins. He met with McDonald. He gave him the case. He said, "Please help this guy," and the guy said, "I'll investigate it." That was like 3 weeks ago. You know, while McDonald is investigating this, the guy is still held against his will. The University of Tennessee has no comment. The Memphis VA, the last time I talked to the Memphis VA, they claimed that this is no longer there's the Veterans Health Administration, that's the actual hospitals, and then there's the VBA, Veterans Benefits Administration, that's where they do the benefits. That's when, like, does your insurance kick in, what's covered? Yeah. They're claiming that what's happening now is not their responsibility. Not their responsibility. He went to the Memphis VA. That lady, Felicia Wyatt, she no longer works at the Memphis VA. That could be a coincidence. Maybe, maybe not. But she was working for the Memphis VA when she gave that statement. They're responsible for the statement. They're now claiming it's not our responsibility. You were partially responsible for forcing this man to be held against his will. He's a veteran, and now they're saying I should go reach out to the Veterans Benefits Administration. I sent an email to McDonald himself. I sent an email to the VA. There's press people in D.C. Yeah. No one wants to comment on that story. Now, I've had that happen before. Do you know what the overwhelming reason for that is? I'm on to something. They don't want to feed the story. They know they're wrong. Yeah. So the less we say, let's hope that it blows over.
Goes away.
And it goes away. And this is typical cover-up. We go to ground. We don't make, because if they make a statement, that statement's used in a second story. They understand how this is how journalism works. If I reach out to a government agency and they give me a statement, that's my story. Here's what the government agency said about this. Yeah. If they say nothing, well, that's a much harder story. Nobody wants to say anything to me, which is why everybody's passing me over to the general counsel and all of these places so that they can give me no statements. And everybody, Dobbs, the last time I communicated with him, he said, I formally request that you stop sending me emails.
What?
To which I responded, send me your copy of the Constitution, the one where the lawyer dictates to the journalist how I do my job. And Dobbs, I'll tell you, can I reveal some behind the scenes
Absolutely.
Stuff? In the story,
we tell the truth here.
In the story, all I said was Dobbs had no comment, which officially was what happened. But I contact this guy, and I explain who I am. And the first words out of his mouth were, Michael, everybody's doing what's in Norman Hughes' best interest. Now, he didn't know that I'd already spoken to Norman Hughes.
Oh, my.
And I use a very poignant quote from Norman Hughes, and I grabbed the quote, and the quote was, I need somebody's help I need somebody to help me get out of here. And I said, you're doing what's in his best interest, because he told me, I need somebody to help me get out of here. And you know what Dobbs' response was? Sir, he is a ward of the state. I don't think you're allowed to speak to him.
What do you mean?
Real, exactly. I didn't say it at that. After the conversation was over, I was like, really, I need your copy of the Constitution. I don't believe that Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin thought, well, unless you're incapacitated. If you're incapacitated, you don't have free speech rights. Oh. And the second time I talked to him, so here's what happened. So he at that point, then he says to me, he says, you know what? Why don't we sit down face to face? Now, I want to explain how this worked. I called his office. I left a voicemail. I left my phone number. He lives in Memphis, 901 area code. I live in Chicago, 312 area code. There's only one of two things. Either he doesn't know what the 312 area code is, or he does. So either he knows I live in Chicago, or he knows I live in an area code he hasn't recognized, and he says to me, I think we need to sit down face to face. Now, if someone from 312 calls you and you live in 901, is your natural response, I think we need to sit down face to face, or is your natural response, I don't think we can sit down face to face? And I said, well, you know, I'm in Chicago. I'm not going to fly out just because that's the only way you're going to give me a statement. And at that point, he said, well, then I have no comment. He calls Debbie McCoy. Debbie McCoy's basically become not just his caretaker, but his friend. So he calls Debbie, and he says to her, right after this, you know, if you bring the media into this, it's going to be harder to bring Norman home.
And why is that?
Well, I wonder. Well, that sounded like
the public needs to know.
Now, that sounded like a veiled threat. Now,
it is.
One thing I've learned about journalism is, if you don't need to act desperate. If you got the goods on someone. So I found this out right away. I knew within 20 minutes that he had issued this veiled threat. Instead of calling him right away, I did some research, and I went and I interrogated this guy, and then he says to me, your questioning is too aggressive. A lawyer says to me, your questioning is too aggressive. A lawyer. So, and at that point he hung up on me. So I want to, in the story, all we say is he had no comment, but I want everyone to understand exactly how slimy this guy is. You know, when Shakespeare said, first we need to kill all the lawyers.
Kill all the lawyers.
He was thinking about a guy like Keith Dobbs. I mean,
that's true.
You know, somebody from the family said to Dobbs, why are you doing this? And when they told me that, I said, that's not a question you ask a guy like this. You know, I'm not going to repeat the word. You know, this is, you know, he's scum. This is the kind of person that's just scum. You don't say that to him. The reason he's doing this is because his career, his job, his livelihood is on the line. If this receives enough media attention, he's through. That's why
we have that in Cook County. I can tell you firsthand. We know scum. The GAL for my mother, Miriam Solo, she's scum. The judge who left town, hightailed it out of Illinois, Judge Lynn Kawamoto, she's scum. They murdered my mother. They pulled her teeth out of her mouth. 29 teeth to extract the gold. My brother was a dentist. He put gold in my mother's mouth.
Right.
And David Martin and his daughter, they are attorneys. They were each taking money from my mother's account. And the bank attached to this, they were all covering up every time that the bank people came in. They were shaking in their boots. They were sweating profusely. So we know scum when we see it.
Right.
And you're not telling me anything that we've not lived through in Cook County.
Right. Well, when you look at a story like this, you have a guy who fought in 2 wars, who saved up, you know, $150,000. That's more than 99% of the people in this country will save up in their lives. He did well for himself. He should die the way he wants to die. You know, I mean, you know, he's not near death now, but he's 81. You know, there's only a short period of time. And everyone involved in this case, what are they thinking? CYA. Memphis VA doesn't want to...
Cover your ass.
Right, they don't want to make a statement. The University of Tennessee, they don't want to make a statement. Dobbs doesn't want to make a statement. Bingham doesn't want to make a statement.
Michael, why didn't you go to the governor? Make a stand and go to the governor.
Well, I'm outside of Tennessee. What we're trying to do now is we're trying to get the Memphis media involved. And there's some people that are speaking to me. I don't, you know, I want to reveal sources now, but hopefully in the next week or two, there's going to be a second story. But the bottom line is, here you have a person, everybody understands what happened, and if they're going to ground and covering their butts, what kind of a person are you? If in that moment, your main concern is your career, your profile, your position, and your leverage, what kind of a person are you? And that's why when you ask a guy like this, why are you doing this? It's the wrong question. What I told that person, that's not the question you ask. In fact, you don't ask a question. You threaten a guy like that. You say, you know what, I'm going to hire a really good lawyer, and I'm going to take all of your money. And that's really the only thing a guy like Dobbs, I believe, responds to. You know, I do a lot of stories of corruption. They don't all get underneath my skin, and this guy Dobbs did. And one of the reasons is, you know, a lawyer with absolutely no respect for the First Amendment.
None of the ones have. None of them have.
Right. You know, you're a lawyer. Even in probate, ultimately the Constitution is what reigns.
They don't give a damn about that in Cook County.
They don't.
They don't.
They don't.
And now we're seeing it in Tennessee.
Right, and they don't. This is a nationwide problem. You know Elaine Renoir.
Yes, Elaine.
She documents this all over the country. It's a nationwide problem. You know, I've done a lot of stories in corruption. Both of the books involve a lot of corruption. And what I've learned is, the first book is actually about a powerful guy that was the victim of corruption. That's the anomaly. The people who were victimized by corruption overwhelmingly are the vulnerable. Their children, you know, family court. Those are the children, are the ones that are corrupted. They're the low-level employee. You know, I wrote the second book is about the whistleblowers. Always they have no power, no rights. They're the ones that are victimized. You know, they're the ones taking on the machine, the government. You know, there's Jeffrey Wigand is the famous whistleblower of cigarettes. In that case, it was big tobacco.
Yeah.
But you know, it's the man against the world. It's the corrupt people almost always corrupt the vulnerable. And in this case, it's Norman Hughes. You know, he's 79 when this started, 81 now. He doesn't remember well. It's easy to make him look, and he doesn't. And look, if you see the videos, he's not that well spoken. But not remembering stuff that well and not being that well spoken doesn't mean you should be forced against your will to live where you don't want to live. And you know what? He doesn't remember that well. He's not that well spoken. But you know what? He fought in 2 wars, which is a lot more wars than almost everyone else in this country. So
I need to just tell you that what was it? 186,000 they took from
Norman.
From Norman.
He had a little more than 150. In May, it was 80, so 70,000, but it's almost half, and that's May. We're into August. I have no idea. And let me give
We're into September.
Right, so who knows? There's one last update that I almost forgot. This is very important. My article came out at the beginning of August. He produced his yearly budget in the middle of August. On September 3, so a week ago exactly, the court sanctioned him for spending $486.84 without a court order. And I had Elaine look at that. She believes it was as a result of my article, but that's the court saying, you better explain. And $21,000, I mean, this guy has the $7,000 that's been approved monthly. What else could you spend the money on? And you know, my whistleblower guy said he has a nice brand new Porsche. Oh. This is Guy Dobbs. He may have bought the new Porsche with that $21,000.
Well,
so you know he's being looked at.
Who's looking at him like this?
The probate court. But keep in mind he has the same judge for 20 cases. My guess is the judge's name is in there too. But my guess is the judge is not innocent in any of this.
You know, funny you should say that attorney bought a Porsche when the attorney, the GAL that was handling my mother's case, David Martin, bought a $1 million mansion in Malibu, California, but wouldn't give us money to bury my mother.
Right.
He stole $1.5 million. My mother was 99 years old, only bedridden because of arthritis. They took all her teeth out of her mouth, so she couldn't eat.
So they could take the gold.
They could take the gold, and they put tubes in her stomach to feed her. She died of dehydration and starvation.
Right.
They only allowed me to see my mother 1 hour a week.
Right.
And to pay $160 to visit my own mother.
Right, and this is the perverted...
Miriam Solo is responsible for all of these trouble, as is Karen Bowes, an attorney. This is very important. Listen to this one. You're talking about attorneys that don't even know this man. I am going to tell you of an attorney, Karen Bowes, who works for Ranella and Ranella in downtown Chicago, who we had as an attorney for 27 years.
And she screwed
And she was the Judas goat that brought us into that court to steal my mother and father's life savings. Right. And that we had to take up a collection to bury my mother because David Martin bought a $1 million mansion in Malibu, California, when he's living on a $2.9 million mansion in Barrington, Illinois.
Right, and this is another very twisted...
What is with these people, Michael?
Well, right, it's their scum.
Scum.
I used a different term that's too...
Dirty scum, whatever scum you want to make it.
I used a different term that it's too inflammatory.
I wouldn't mind using it.
They're all psychopaths. These are psychopaths.
Yes. By the way, we have information that the GAL is psychopath. She's
right. Well,
borderline.
Who else but a psychopath would do something like this?
Yes, true.
Here's the twisted, perverted. The perverted thing is, in probate court, someone like you, the daughter, holds less power, less sway, and less importance than some bureaucrat, some lawyer.
That's right.
And look, I just did one in Cook County about a woman named Mildred Willis. There, it's lawyers and bureaucrats. And like even Dobbs, in this case, he was the VA conservator, or whatever, VA guardian, I think is what they called him. It's a bureaucrat. That's a fancy title for a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Bureaucrats, lawyers, doctors who have never seen the person before.
No.
They hold more power than the daughter, the son.
They never met my mother, and they're making decisions on her life and saying that I have no standing in that court.
Right.
That's why that judge hightailed it the hell out of Illinois.
Right.
She went to Texas. What the hell does she think she's going to do in Texas?
Well,
this isn't going to follow her?
To get away from this. It's to get away from it. But right,
Coward. They're all cowards.
Right. It's a very, very cowardly thing. And, you know, Dobbs will probably wind up having to do something like that as well, because he's, you know, once your name is attached to it, it's harder to do the business in that area. Now, can we talk about the second case?
Absolutely.
So just this morning, I wrote a second article. It's published on another website called Rebel Pundit. It's rebelpundit.com. It's about a woman named Mildred Willis, and she lives on the south side of Chicago. She lived on the south side of Chicago. So 4 years ago, she was 71 at the time. So this is a relatively young woman now.
Oh, my.
So she was 71 at the time. Her husband was dying. Her daughter was concerned, and her mother agreed with this. Her daughter wanted to temporarily take over financial decisions. Went to an attorney. His last name is Goldbot, Terrence Goldbot. And she explained the situation. What should I do? And Goldbot said, well, you should put her in guardianship. And at that point, I asked her, hold on. At that point, I asked her a question. I said, how did he explain guardianship to you? And she said, well, he gave me a brochure. So I spoke with Elaine Renoir, and she said, in a case like that, what should have happened is power of attorney. Power of attorney is simpler, less hassle, less bureaucracy. And power of attorney, all that means is you're able to do the financial decisions. It's much less than guardianship. So what happened was, so she puts her in guardianship, and she has no idea what it means. So they start asking her for forms, for budgets, for financial statements, for this, that, and the other. And then they start questioning every financial decision she's made. Why did you spend money here? Why did you spend money there? In Cook County, there's something called a Cook County Public Guardian's Office. The man that runs it is Robert Harris, and he is absolutely deeply involved in this case. His office especially, but him himself. So they get involved.
Corrupt up to the earlobes?
Right, it's Cook County. What do you expect? So Robert Harris's office takes over the case. They accuse the daughter of embezzling effectively.
Oh, this sounds familiar.
$164,000. So I asked Stacy, I was like, you know, did you do this? And she goes, my mom doesn't have $164,000. I couldn't have embezzled it if I wanted to. So she spent a few things on trips, and I said, well, what about the trips? So she goes, these are pre-planned trips. My mom knew I was taking the money out. She goes, but frankly, the bulk of the money was going towards guardianship. So they step in, they take guardianship away from her, and then they use, this guy's name is Dr. Emerito Natawanan. I think I got it right. He's on the south side, again, internal medicine. He comes up with a laundry list. He said she has congestive heart failure. She has memory loss suggestive of dementia. Renal failure, which she did have, and like 6 other things. Now, if you have congestive heart failure, dementia, and late-stage renal failure, any of those 3 things, it's 6 months to live. This is 4 years ago. She's still alive. Now, I'm thinking, if 4 years ago you came up with 3 diseases that should have killed you in 6 months and you're still alive, I'm thinking that the medical opinion wasn't really all that expert. And again, a guy with internal medicine. Oh, and chronic depression. That was the key. Ugh. Chronic depression. How does a guy in internal medicine know about chronic depression? So then, the second expert opinion.
They're all doctors. Everybody's a doctor.
The second expert opinion is I can't remember the name, but it was somebody in the Cook County Guardian's office. It was the same stuff and like 6 other things. So again, and this was like a year and a half ago, and this lady's a social worker. So now we got a social worker that knows if you have chronic depression, if you have congestive heart failure. Congestive heart failure, those are heart specialists. I mean, you don't just walk off the street and, oh, yeah, you got congestive heart failure. So you get these 2 non-expert opinions. And again, just like the Norman Hughes case, the family took him to a guy, I think it's Dr. Keith Hopkins, a psychologist, who ran tests. and effectively at the end said, in my opinion, she's perfectly competent. And this was a psychologist testing her memory and her supposed depression, saying, no, you're fine. And he actually, I don't know what the test was, but he said she scored a 25 out of 30,
wow.
which was also interesting because
wow.
he actually had a test that he was using, whereas Dr. Nata went on and said, the way they wrote it, he goes, he opined. He opined. Well, what was the opine based on? If you're a doctor, you do the tests. You say, here's how I came up with it. Like chronic, you know, people get depressed, but chronic depression is something a lot deeper. You test for it.
Sure.
There's a way, you know, I believe Robin Williams had that. So it's not something that you just, you know, you look depressed. You know, you have to do a test for it. And none of that happens. So here she's in a nursing home. This one's even worse. No one knows how much she's paying for the nursing home. She gets about $3,100 a month in pension. We don't know if it covers it or not.
Well, wait a minute. Let me just add this.
Mm-hmm.
She gets $3,100 in pension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe the state will kick in some money,
maybe.
and the federal government kicks in money. Now, my question to you is, did you find out who owns the nursing home? Because
I didn't find out who owns the nursing home.
Okay, because my mother was a victim of Morris Esformis nursing homes.
This is one I don't believe that was the name.
Unbearably corrupt.
Right.
I can't. The words won't come out of my mouth
right.
to tell you how horrific this man is.
I didn't find corruption with the nursing home in either case, but I want to state I didn't find corruption with the nursing home in either case. I'm not a world beater. That doesn't mean there wasn't any. But so the nursing, you know, because if someone comes into your nursing home, you're supposed to take care of them. You're not supposed to get involved in the probate matter, and I don't think it would have been appropriate, even if they knew that this wasn't right. Be that as it may, number one, in both cases, every lawyer involved with the case, $250 an hour. This is
so $250
keep in
an
mind,
hour. Wow.
What's the point of guardianship supposedly?
To save their money for
right,
them.
but we're going to charge you $250 an hour to save your money.
That's what they did with my mother.
This is the guardian ad litem who's a lawyer.
Yes.
Again, guardian ad litem, $250 an hour.
Yes.
The lawyer for the mother, the lawyer for the daughter,
yes.
they're all approved $250 an hour. So, and the Cook County Public Guardian's Office, now, this file is over 1,000 pages long. So I didn't study every page, but just from 2012 to 2013, over $26,000 in fees. So here they are, they're supposed to be saving her money. Every lawyer, every time you talk, $250 an hour.
They're wiping her out.
Right. So now they've gone through her money, and I believe they have. And the reason I believe that is just a few weeks ago they took the house. House is owned free and clear.
Oh my!
Now they're going to sell the house. They'll have. The daughter told me she thought at least $100,000 it's worth. Now I don't know if they sell it, they're not going to get 100 cents on the dollar. They'll get 60, 70, 80 cents on the dollar. Now you got 60 to 80,000, and that she said 100. It might be worth more than that. She said about 100. So if they can get 60 to 100,000, now they have 60 to 100,000 more that they can go.
For them in their pocket.
And they'll keep going. Keep in mind, this woman is probably perfectly healthy. She's 74. This could be another 10 years. And this is another thing Elaine Renoir said. When they run out of money from the family, you pay for it because then they go to Medicare and Medicaid. So once the money runs out, then you go to Medicare and Medicaid. Now you, the taxpayers, are paying for her.
Well, you know, I called because my mother was at the nursing home downtown Chicago, which we didn't. She never wanted to go to a nursing home.
Right.
She wanted to stay in her own home, her own apartment, or come live with us. That, you know, this Miriam Solo put her in this nursing home, a Warren Bar Pavilion, who is a Shriner. My husband is a Shriner, and Warren Barr was a potentate. But this Morris Esformis, bought the nursing home from the Warren Bar Pavilion, bought that, and so he put his own people in there. They charged $750 to take 6, 7 x-rays, chest x-rays of my mother, each one costing $750. I brought that to the attention because I was paying the bill on it. And I said, what's this all about? Oh, she said, if we made a mistake, we'll correct it. They never corrected it.
Right.
And we have documentation, verbal documentation, because we asked if we could record it. They said, sure. And we sat in there and they recorded, and I said, what is the $750? You took one chest x-ray. Why is there 7? And we're being charged 7 times that amount.
Right.
And she says, well, they couldn't explain it.
Right, they never can.
And then my mother, as I explained to you, she was at her passing. She just had turned 99 years old. No medical illness, only infirmed by arthritis.
Right.
She was down to spindly size, like from a concentration camp.
Right.
And they had hired out, the Miriam Solo hired out the nursing home, Morris's Pharmacist nursing home staff to aid my mother in recreation. So she was paying $15,000 a month. And then they, on top of that, added more charges because there was a girl from the Philippines who didn't even understand English, who was sitting there trying to read a book. She couldn't read a book. She couldn't take notes. She didn't know anything. But we were not allowed to visit with my mother.
Right, and that's
privately.
Right, that's what they do.
Because in fear of what my mother might tell us. And my mother did ask, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. I said, Mother, I'm doing the best I can.
Right.
However we tried, I was told by this misfit judge, and we think that there is something totally wrong with her, mentally wrong with Lynn Kawamoto, because sometimes she'd come in smiley, sometimes she'd come in sad, she'd shake her head. I said to my husband, there's something looking not right with this woman. What's the problem? I was the total blame for everything that was wrong.
Right.
When there was nothing wrong, we had 3 CPAs that measured everything down to the penny, yet she wanted to hold me responsible for 16 checks that we never saw in our life that my mother was receiving from an annuity fund. Who was signing it, who was cashing it, what account did it go to, what bank? And by the way, just to add a little bit of kick to this story, in the text that we received from the court, they are depositing, or monies were deposited, in the First Nations Canadian Bank. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like they're trying to move them more.
FNB, First Canadian, FC, First Canadian, help me here. First Canadian, a Nations Bank. It sounds like a bank that you would use downtown, but they didn't use the name, they only used the initials. So it sounds like the First Federal, whatever, National Bank. It's First Nations Canadian Bank. The money was going across into Canada.
They're trying to hide the money.
They were trying to hide the money. We didn't have money to bury her, but they took every penny. $1.5 million, besides ripping her teeth out of her mouth while she was alive. I wasn't allowed to see her for 10 months because they knew she was talking with me. And so where does this get us? She's dead and buried, but if they have to exhume the body, although I don't want to do that, she died of dehydration and starvation and no teeth. No teeth. How can she eat? How can she survive? And I was told by the judge I had no standing because I'm only the daughter.
Well,
I took care of her for 5.5 years before any of this came about. And I said to Karen Bowes, I said, well, what do we do? Because we went to my mother's private attorney, and she made me power of attorney for everything. And Karen Bowes says, power of attorney is nothing. You need to be the guardian, and guardianship trumps everything. Those are her words. Guardianship trumps. That's very wrong. It's not. Remember, Michael, We knew this attorney for 27 years. She is in her 60s now, and we knew her, and she was a part of family gatherings. We met her up in Ravinia. We took her out for dinner, all parties, all holidays, and she did this to us. Right. 27 years we know her.
Right.
What is in her thought? What is her problem?
Again, you're asking the wrong question.
Well,
you don't ask questions like that of people like that.
She's a psychopath. They are all psychopaths.
Corruption, the way I define corruption is conflict of interest, meaning opportunity, meaning a lack of moral character. And that's basically what happens. All forms of corruption, there's a conflict of interest. Your attorney, the attorney, all these kids, they have a conflict of interest. They see an opportunity, and they don't have enough moral character to understand this is the right thing, this is the thing that benefits me, and they decide to do the thing that benefits me, and that's the definition of a psychopath.
We never spent penny one of my mother's money. We took out of our own bank account, and I was doing well just to care for her.
This is what Elaine Renoir said. If you were stealing from your mother, they should have gone to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and presented criminal evidence.
Yes.
But you weren't.
No.
And because you weren't, what they did was they presented it to probate court where they don't really follow the Constitution. They don't really follow the rules of law.
This is a court of law with a flag in America.
You'd think, but they don't. And these are kangaroo courts. They're the wild, wild west, as I describe them, of our judicial system. And I'm writing a book on family court, and family court is the same way. And what happens in both of these courts, in family court, it's Orwellian in this sense, in the sense that what happens is they follow this principle called the best interest of the child, which now people who don't know family court call, of course, best interest. That sounds great. Well, here's the thing about best interest of the child. If you've got to say it, you're probably not really following the best interest of the child. In probate court, what they do is they say the best interest of the ward. So forget the rule of law, forget the rule of evidence, things like hearsay. Like in the case of Norman Hughes, this lady, Dr. Whitney Schroyer, she never testified. This guy Bingham presented a report where he said, I spoke to Whitney Schroyer. That's what's called hearsay. Hearsay means that you heard something and you say it. You can't do that in a court of law. But in probate court, it's okay. And how does he get away with it? I'm saying this in the best interest of the ward.
No, it's a corrupt judge. Don't just say that. It's a corrupt judge.
Right, correct. But they get away with it because they say, we're doing this for the best interest of the ward. Look, in my case, a father committed suicide, was taken away from his kids for 3.5 years, and the entire time they kept saying, the best interest of the child, best interest of the child. The child doesn't have a father anymore. How is that in the best interest of the child? But they do it because they have this Orwellian concept that really means nothing. All right, if you've got to say the best interest of the child, you're really not doing anything in the best interest of the child. And the same thing with the ward. And that's how they get away with all of this stuff. Rule of evidence, rule of law, doesn't matter.
We want them all in jumpsuits. We want them in jail. We'll talk about it. I can talk about it. You've murdered my mother. You murdered my mother. I can talk about it. I can write about it. We've got it on YouTube. We'll do whatever we have to do. Lynn Kawamoto, you have a problem. You'll never be a judge again as long as I can be able to find you out and where you're located. Miriam Solo, you are a big problem. You are psychotic for sure. They don't even allow you back up on the probate court anymore. David Martin and your daughter Melissa Martin, or whatever her name is, Martin, both took money being they were supposed to be. It's a tag team. Who gets more money? So they get more money together. Karen Bowes and Bruce Lang, we're going to get you. We're going to get you. We need to just help Michael. We're going off the air. Find Michael where can they find you, Michael?
If you just put me on, I write for several different websites.
Michael Volpe, and you'll get them.
Right, my two books, either of the two books you can get, Prosecutors Gone Wild.
We're going to have them back. This is very heated. The studio is quite chilly. But we're going to be back on the air. Thank you for allowing us in your home or your place of business. And we'll see you next time on North Shore Live. Thank you for watching.